They tore down my fence while I was deployed, didn't call, didn't ask, didn't even wait for me to get back. And the wildest part is, they thought I'd just accept it. Like 4 feet of land is something you can just take, and nobody's gonna push back. I bought that house in 2019, just outside Raleigh, North Carolina. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. You know, half an acre, quiet neighborhood that used to be farmland before developers came in and carved it up into these clean little lots. The kind of place where people wave when they drive by, mow their lawns on Saturdays, grill on Sundays. Predictable, in a good way. The fence was already there when I moved in, wooden privacy fence running along the back, weathered but solid, and more importantly, it lined up perfectly with the survey from closing. I remember the guy pointing out the iron pins at each corner, tapping one with his boot like, "This is your line right here." Simple, clear, no confusion. For years, nothing happened. No disputes, no weird conversations, just normal life, until the house behind mine sold. That's when Trevor and Lindsay showed up. Now at first, they seemed fine. Friendly, even. Brought over a bottle of wine the first week. Did the whole introduction thing. Asking what trash day was, where the nearest grocery store was, standard neighbor stuff. Lindsay did most of the talking. Trevor just kind of stood there, scanning everything. Not in a creepy way exactly, but like he was taking inventory. And I noticed something right away. He kept looking past me, into my backyard. Not like, nice yard, looking more like measuring. Calculating. I brushed it off at the time. You don't assume the worst about people right away, right? A few weeks later, Trevor catches me outside while I'm trimming the hedges. He goes, "Hey man, quick question. You ever had your property line checked back there?" And I remember pausing for a second, because it felt out of place. I told him, yeah, I've got a survey from when I bought the place. Everything lines up with the fence, pins are still there. He nods slowly, like he's processing something, then goes, "Yeah, our contractor thinks that fence might actually be a little over." A little over. I laughed, not in a rude way, just kind of surprised. I said, "Well, unless the pins moved, it's exactly where it's supposed to be." He gives me this tight smile, not friendly, not hostile, just controlled. "Pins can be off," he says. And there it was. Not aggressive, not confrontational, but not casual either. Like he'd already decided something and was just easing me into it. I didn't argue. Didn't feel like getting into it over something that, in my mind, was already settled. I just said, "If you're concerned, you should probably get a survey done." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't like that answer. After that, things got a little off. Not obvious. Not enough to complain about. Just small things. They stopped waving. Trevor started spending more time in the backyard, walking the line where the fence was, sometimes with a tape measure, sometimes just pacing it out like he was rehearsing something in his head. Once, I caught him standing there early in the morning, just staring at the fence, coffee in hand, completely still. That was the first time I thought, yeah, this isn't over. Then about a month later, I got orders. Had to deploy overseas for a few months. Before I left, I did one last walk around the property, checked everything, locked things up, and yeah, I noticed Trevor out there again, near the fence. He looked up when he saw me, gave me that same tight smile. "Travel safe," he said. And I swear, there was something in the way he said it that didn't sit right. Like he knew something I didn't. Fast forward 3 months. I get back on a Thursday afternoon, tired, jet-lagged, just wanting to be home again. I pull into the driveway, grab my bag, walk through the house. Everything looks normal. Until I step into the backyard. And my brain just stalls. Because something's missing. It takes a second to register, like when you walk into a room and can't immediately figure out what's different, but then it hits you. The fence. It's gone. Not broken. Not partially removed. Gone. Every single panel ripped out, stacked in a pile off to the side like scrap wood. The posts yanked clean out of the ground, leaving these raw holes in the dirt like something got pulled out by force. And then I see the line. Bright blue spray paint cutting across my yard, straight, deliberate, about 4 feet closer to my house. For feet. I just stand there for a second, trying to process it, because it doesn't make sense. Who does that? Who removes someone else's fence while they're gone? And then I hear voices. I look up and there's a crew in Trevor's yard, setting up stakes, measuring, talking like this is just another job. So I walk over, slow at first, then faster, because now it's starting to sink in. I ask the guy who looks like he's in charge, "Hey, who told you to take down my fence?" He barely looks at me. Homeowner, he says, nodding toward Trevor's house. Said it was on their property. Just like that. No hesitation. No doubt. Like this was completely normal. I feel that heat rising in my chest, but I keep it together. Did you verify that? I ask. He shrugs. We were told it was already measured. Of course you were. So I turn and head straight for Trevor's door. Knock once. Twice. Harder the second time. He opens it like he's been expecting me. Calm. Relaxed. Almost prepared. I don't even waste time. Why is my fence in pieces in my yard? And he doesn't flinch. Our contractor confirmed it was over the property line, he says. About 4 feet. About 4 feet. I stare at him for a second, trying to decide if he actually believes this or if he's just committing to it. I have a survey, I tell him. Stamped. From when I bought the house. The fence matches the pins. He tilts his head slightly, like he's considering it, then gives me that same controlled smile. Surveys can be wrong. And that's when it clicks. This isn't confusion. This is intention. He didn't remove the fence because he was sure. He removed it because he wanted to be right. And standing there, looking at this guy who just erased part of my property while I was halfway across the world, I realized something real simple. He thought I wouldn't fight it. He thought I'd come back, see the damage, maybe argue a little, but eventually let it go because it's just 4 feet. And I'll be honest, part of me wanted to explode right there. Yell, threaten, make a scene. But another part of me, the part that had dealt with way bigger problems than this, just went quiet. Because I knew something he didn't. This wasn't going to be a shouting match. This was going to be a process. So I looked at him, nodded once, and said, all right, we'll sort it out. And I walked away. And behind me, I could feel him watching, probably thinking he'd already won. Yeah, he really shouldn't have thought that. The next morning, I didn't go back over there, didn't argue, didn't even look at that spray-painted line again. Because once you realize someone's operating off assumption instead of fact, arguing with them is just noise. It doesn't change anything. So I made a call. Not to Trevor, to a surveyor. A real one. Licensed, certified, the kind of guy whose work actually holds up in court, not just in backyard debates. His name was Carl Benton, older guy, quiet, the type who doesn't waste words because he doesn't have to. When he showed up, he didn't ask for a story, didn't care about neighbor drama, just said, show me the pins. And that right there, that's when things started shifting. Because facts don't argue. They just exist. We walked the perimeter together, and I showed him where the fence used to be, where the posts had been pulled out. He nodded, took a few notes, then started searching for the original markers. Took him maybe 15 minutes. He found the first iron pin buried under a thin layer of dirt, brushed it off like he'd done it 1,000 times before, then tapped it with his tool and said, this hasn't moved. Simple sentence. But it carried weight. Then he found the next one, and the next, lining them up in his head, mapping out the boundary like it was already drawn in front of him. And then he started placing flags. Bright orange flags, one by one, clean line, no hesitation. And I'll tell you, there's something almost satisfying about watching truth take shape like that. No opinions, no debates, just a line being reestablished exactly where it always was. And just like that, Trevor's blue spray paint didn't match. Not even close. Carl's flags cut straight through what Trevor had already started treating like his backyard, about 4 feet deep. 4 feet. Same number. Completely different reality. Carl finishes up, hands me the report a couple days later, stamped, certified, airtight. And the conclusion? Same as the one I got when I bought the house. Nothing had changed. Except now I had 2 surveys saying the same thing, and a neighbor who had already acted like they didn't matter. That's when I started documenting everything. Photos of the torn-out fence, the holes in the ground, the stacked panels, the spray paint line, the flags. Every angle, every detail. Not because I wanted to escalate things, but because at this point, I knew I wasn't dealing with someone who would just admit they were wrong. And that's the part people don't always get. When someone crosses a line like that, literally and figuratively, they don't usually stop halfway. They commit. So I made another call. This time, to an attorney. His name was Daniel Harper, specialized in property disputes, and from the first conversation, I could tell he'd seen this exact situation before. Maybe not my version of it, but the pattern. I sent him everything, both surveys, all the photos, a timeline of what happened. He called me back the next day. Didn't waste time. Yeah, this is clean, he said. They shouldn't have touched that fence. And then he explained it in a way that stuck with me. According to standard procedure, boundary disputes are supposed to be resolved before any physical changes are made. You verify, you confirm, you get documentation, and only then do you act. Trevor skipped all of that. He didn't confirm, he assumed. And then he acted. And from a legal perspective, that's where the problem starts. Because once you remove a structure that sits on someone else's property, especially without permission, you're no longer in a gray area. You've created liability. Daniel laid it out real simple. This isn't about who thought they were right, he said. It's about who can prove it and who caused the damage. And right now, that wasn't looking good for Trevor. So Daniel drafted a certified letter. Nothing aggressive, nothing emotional, just facts. Replace the fence, restore the property, cover the damages. We sent it, and for a brief moment, I thought maybe this would be the off-ramp. The point where Trevor realizes he pushed too far, cuts his losses, fixes it quietly. But then the response came back, and it told me everything I needed to know. His attorney claimed Trevor acted under a good faith belief that the fence was misplaced and offered to split the cost of installing a new one. But, and this part really stood out, they wanted the new fence placed along their proposed boundary, not the surveyed one, their version. And I remember sitting there reading that letter, thinking, you're still doing it. You're still trying to make reality match your assumption instead of the other way around. So I called Daniel. He didn't even hesitate. We're filing, he said. And that's when everything shifted from a disagreement into a case. Now we're in it. Paperwork, filings, timelines. And here's where things get interesting. Because once you enter that process, people have to start answering questions under oath. And not everyone is as careful as they think they are. During discovery, Daniel deposed the contractor Trevor hired. And this guy, he wasn't trying to lie, wasn't trying to protect anyone. He was just answering questions the way people do when they don't realize how important their words are. Calm, straightforward, Daniel asked him. Did you confirm the property boundary with a licensed survey before removing the fence? The guy says, no. Why not? And this is the moment, the one that changed the entire direction of the case. He says, the homeowner told us to go ahead and remove it first. He didn't want to delay the project. Just like that. No hesitation. No spin. And when I heard that later, I just sat there for a second, because that one sentence explained everything. It wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. Trevor didn't verify because verification might have slowed him down, and he had already decided what the outcome should be. And that's what people don't realize. This is a psychological trap. Once you convince yourself you're right, you start treating confirmation like an obstacle instead of a necessity. And Trevor walked straight into that. After that deposition, the tone changed. You could feel it. Because now it wasn't just my word against his. It wasn't even survey versus survey anymore. It was documented proof that he chose to act before confirming. And in situations like that, courts don't usually side with the person who moved first. They side with the person who was right and stayed put. By the time we got closer to court, everything was lined up clean. 2 surveys. Matching. Photos. Clear. Timeline. Solid. And a statement that basically confirmed intent. Trevor, on the other hand, was still holding on to that same position. Still arguing the boundary. Still acting like this was just a disagreement. But at that point, it wasn't. It was consequences catching up. And the thing about consequences? They don't care how confident you were when you made the decision. They just show up. By the time we actually got into the courtroom, it didn't feel dramatic the way people imagine it. No shouting, no surprise witnesses bursting through the door, just a quiet room. A judge who had seen 1,000 cases like this, and 2 sides that were about to find out whose version of reality actually held up. And I remember sitting there, hands folded, just watching Trevor across the room. Same posture, same controlled expression, like he was still holding on to the idea that this could go his way if he just stayed confident enough. And maybe, in his head, it still made sense. That's the thing about these situations, people don't see themselves as the villain. They see themselves as the one correcting a mistake. But the law doesn't care about your narrative. It cares about evidence. Daniel laid everything out clean, no theatrics, no exaggeration, just facts stacked one on top of the other. Original survey from when I bought the house. New certified survey confirming the same boundary. Photos of the fence before removal. Photos of the damage after. And then, the contractor's statement. That one line. About removing the fence before confirming the boundary to avoid delays. You could almost feel the weight of it settle into the room. Trevor's attorney tried to push the good faith angle again, saying his client genuinely believed the fence was misplaced, that he relied on contractor measurements, that there was no malicious intent. And sure, maybe that was true. But here's the problem. From a legal perspective, intent doesn't erase responsibility. You don't get to damage someone's property and then step back and say, well, I thought it was okay. The judge didn't rush. Took his time going through everything, flipping through documents, asking a few pointed questions, mostly about the surveys. Because at the end of the day, that was the core issue. Where's the actual property line? Not where Trevor thought it was. Not where his contractor guessed it might be. Where it is according to recorded, verifiable data. And both surveys said the same thing. The fence was inside my property. That was it. Everything else, all the arguments, all the assumptions, just noise around that one fact. When the ruling came down, it wasn't loud or dramatic, just clear. Trevor was responsible for the removal of the fence. He was ordered to pay for full replacement, not a cheaper version, not a compromise, a full replacement matching what was there before. He had to cover the cost of restoring the yard, fixing the holes, releveling the ground, everything. And on top of that, he was responsible for my legal fees. And I'll be honest, hearing that, I didn't feel this big rush of victory. It was more like confirmation, like the system worked the way it's supposed to. But then, it went a step further. Because during all of this, something else had come up. Trevor's renovation plans. The patio, the landscaping, all the work he was so eager to start, the plans that he didn't want to delay. Yeah, those plans had been reviewed too. And it turns out, they extended past the actual boundary line. Into my property. Same 4 feet. So not only was he wrong about the fence, he had designed an entire project around that wrong assumption. And once that got flagged, everything stopped. Permits had to be revised. Plans had to be redrawn. Work couldn't continue until it complied with the actual property line. And just like that, the delay he was trying so hard to avoid, he bought himself months of it. Almost a year by the time everything was corrected. And the cost? Between replacing the fence, restoring the yard, paying legal fees, and redesigning his entire project, he ended up spending over $40,000. All because he didn't want to wait a few days for a proper survey. The new fence went up a few weeks later. Same line, same placement, exactly where the original one had been. Only difference now, the survey pins are capped and visible, marked clearly, so there's no confusion for anyone who decides to estimate things in the future. And Trevor? He changed. Doesn't wave anymore. Doesn't come outside when I'm in the yard. If we cross paths, it's quick eye contact at most. Then he looks away like the ground suddenly got interesting. His patio? Smaller than what he originally planned. You can actually see where it stops short now, where it had to be pulled back to respect the line that was always there. And that 4 feet he tried to take? Still mine. Never moved. Never changed. Just temporarily challenged by someone who thought confidence could override reality. And that's really what this whole thing comes down to. Not the fence. Not even the money. It's the idea that you can decide something is yours and act on it without checking if you're actually right. Because sooner or later, reality shows up, and it doesn't negotiate. So now I'm curious. If you were in my position, you come home, your fence is gone, your neighbors already claimed part of your yard like it was always theirs. Do you handle it the same way? Do you go straight to legal action? Or do you try to work it out first, even after they've already crossed that line? Because I'll tell you this. Looking back, I didn't win anything extra. I just made sure I didn't lose what was already mine. And sometimes, that's the whole fight. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read more of them than you'd think.